Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes, and see you.
Oh,
How
good.
are you?
Good. I was looking up recipes on I made sure everything was set, then I started looking at recipes and you're like, it's jumping on. I'm like, oh, it's time.
Same. I was organizing myself for the party. Um, so
Yes.
and deep diving into that.
Hey,
Hello.
Tom.
Hi, how's it
Hi,
going?
good.
You
So
guys,
nice to meet you.
it's great to meet you. Thank you so much for having me. You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes,
Everything's fine
we can hear
coming.
you can hear us okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
This is
Good.
so great. Thank you so much for being such champions of the book and for inviting me to this wonderful event. It's been
Oh,
No,
lovely.
I love it so much.
Oh,
it's
thank you.
so good. It's really, really great.
And we
Awesome.
picked it for our biggest subscription box, our sleuth box, which is our mystery thrillers, and
Mhm.
have just heard wonderful things from people who've been able to read it. So,
Awesome. I love it. I have a little guest here who's at the side of the desk pestering me.
Oh, perfect.
oh,
I'll
Oh
try
my
to
God.
she doesn't bark, but she's very insistent, but my husband is kind of helping manage her. So
we have
I
cats, Allison and I do, that will sometimes jump in. So we're
oh,
good.
Yes, I have cats and I have a beagle, which is why I'm here at the office and not at home
oh,
because,
beagles howl.
oh my gosh, my
Okay, so
husband loves it so much and I'm over it. I don't think it's cute at all, but
Yeah,
people seem to love it.
that I love all dogs and cats. I should mention before we get rolling, if there's a natural moment at the end, I'm in the process of signing a deal for a sequel to Treasure Hunters Club, so that might be worth teasing at the
Ooh,
Oh,
end of our conversation.
definitely.
yes.
We have those questions and we have lots of questions for you. What the best part
Great.
about this is, in my opinion, which I'll introduce us formally, is that we get to talk about the whole book. So you don't have to just give teasers or whatever. Like it's all here.
Oh, it's
So
because people have read it. Oh, I love
people
that
have read
because
it.
usually I have to keep
Yes.
things kind of quiet. Okay, great. So we can talk about the big
Yes.
twist at the
We
end.
can talk about the twist. Yes. So
Great.
fun.
I love it.
Um,
I
great.
have to ask about Wheeler. Is this your dog? I was looking at the dedication of the book. Is this
Wheeler was my past dog. Yeah, Wheeler was
okay?
my little old guy who he died shortly after I started writing the book,
Oh,
and he had been I wrote young adult for years before I made the shift to adult mysteries, and Wheeler was there next to me for every book. So
Oh,
it was a nice moment to kind of honor him
I'm
and say
glad you did.
I love
Yes.
that.
we love our pets.
I noticed that your dog next to you is a sheepdog.
No, she's a Russian Spaniel. Yeah,
Okay.
she just kind of popped.
I grew up with like a sheepdog and we always laughed because I would always try to run with her and she'd try to like herd me.
Heard you around the
Yes. She's
yard.
like,
Yeah, no,
no, you can go
I've known
this
a few
way.
sheepdogs in my day. I love it. They're great little characters. So how many people do we have signed up for tonight?
We have
Oh,
55 signed up and we record this
no
and send
kidding.
it out also the next day. And so a lot of people view it then as well.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's 8 or 10 people, so
Oh, we've
that's
hyped it
wonderful.
up. Don't worry for
I
sure.
love it. I love it. Well, I really hope to visit in person someday. So
Oh, that would be amazing.
yeah.
That'd be so great.
We would love
Well,
it.
I will officially start us off. And for you guys that have joined us, welcome to Fabled's Book Club, where we get to visit with authors every month and talk about books beginning, middle, and end, which is my indication to tell you that we will be talking about the end of this book, which is very important. If you have not read it, please shut your computer. We don't want to spoil anything. You can view it after you finish the book. And speaking of that, we will send this out 24 hours after we conclude our book club. It'll come to you automatically through Zoom and you'll be able to watch it. So if anytime you need to jump off or you're like, oh, I'm not quite at that point yet, feel free. I have the chat open here. So if you have any questions you would like to ask Tom that we don't mention, feel free to drop it in there and we'll try to get to it throughout our talk. Though we have lots of questions for you, so don't even worry. But I will let Elizabeth officially introduce you, Tom.
All right, so tonight we have Tom Ryan, who is an internationally best-selling, award-winning author, screenwriter, and producer. His adult mystery debut, The Treasure Hunters Club, was an instant USA Today, Globe and Mail, and Toronto Star bestseller. His YA mystery, Keep This to Yourself, was the winner of the 2020 ITW Thriller Award for Best YA Thriller, the 2020 Author Ellis Award for Best YA Crime Book, and the 2021 Ann Connor Brimer Award. His follow-up YA mystery, I Hope You're Listening, was the winner of the 2021 Lambda Award for Best LGBTQ Mystery. Tom and his husband and their dog live in Nova Scotia. And this is kind of usually where I just say how I came upon your book. Of course, I was diving through the catalogs, and I have another good bookseller friend, our book buyer friend, and he had told me that this was just a really, really fun little mystery. And I instantly picked it up. And of course, it's explored by Riley Sager, which is pretty awesome. And I just was thoroughly entertained from cover to cover. I told people it was like a mashup of Goonies meets Anne of Green Gables. And that seems to hook people right away. So I'm thrilled. I love the book. And I have been hoping all this time that we would be able to have you on our book club Zoom. So thrilled that you're here tonight and can't wait to talk to you more about the book. And I'd love for you to go ahead and talk. And if you can kind of give everyone a brief synopsis of the book to get started.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. This is really thrilling. I mean, I'm off in my little corner of Nova Scotia, and through the magic of Zoom, I'm able to do these sorts of visits to different places that would be, kind of prohibitive in other circumstances. So thanks so much, and it's been so great to meet so many readers and booksellers and librarians and just book people who have kind of responded to this book. The Treasure Hunters Club. I have to hold the cover. It's actually, the cover is behind me. It's here. I love this cover so much.
It's so great.
The color combo is perfect.
It's beautiful, and they absolutely nailed just the tone of the book. I think it's got a bit of mystery to it. There's a skull and crossbones on there. It's got that whole treasure feel, and this really was the vibe of the book as I began writing it that I was going for, was something that would be obviously a murder mystery first and foremost. That's what I write. That's what I love to read more than anything else is mysteries. But I also wanted it to be bigger than that. I wanted it to be a kind of a work with a broader canvas. I wanted to jump back and forth in time. I wanted to tell the story through different perspectives of different characters. And the bottom line, the basics of the story are: there's a small town in Nova Scotia. It's not a real town, but it is loosely based on a few different communities in Nova Scotia. But my town is Maple Bay, which is notorious and has been for a couple of hundred years as the site of a legendary missing pirate treasure. And what makes this treasure so, kind of auspicious is the fact that it has a provenance. Archaeologists, historians, researchers believe that this treasure actually existed. So there's a historical documentation of how this treasure came to be, but to most people in this community, the understanding is that this treasure has been missing since it was first buried a few hundred years ago. Of course, as you get into the story, there's a lot more to it than that. I don't want to give too much away, but against this backdrop of this small town, this charming sort of cozy mystery small town, Maple Bay, that's known for this missing treasure, three strangers emerge into the story. The first is Cass, who is around late 20s. She's an American. She wrote a young adult novel that had sort of a splashy debut, but was a massive failure. And she finds herself unexpectedly offered a chance to come to Maple Bay and spend a year house sitting. And she looks at this as her opportunity to maybe lick her wounds and try to write another book, take one more crack at writing a book after this original failure. She comes to town, she hears about this mystery, and she decides to start exploring it in the hopes of maybe writing sort of a Julie and Julia style nonfiction memoir. Woman on the down and out decides to search for a treasure, and that's kind of her idea. And of course, she gets drawn into the story. Then we have Peter, who is a 40-year-old gay man living on the west coast of Canada in Vancouver. who is very adrift. He lives with a roommate he barely knows in a crappy apartment. He has a dead-end job. He's single. He just feels kind of aimless. He's just doesn't know where his life is going. And he, out of the blue, gets a letter from a grandmother who he really didn't know existed because his parents are dead and there was some estrangement. And she lives in Maple Bay, Nova Scotia. And she says to him, look, I'm about to turn 90. I've spent the past 10 years trying to track you down. There's some family stuff that I need to talk through with somebody, and you're my last living descendant. Please come to Nova Scotia. You can stay with me in our big old family home, and we'll figure some stuff out together. He's got nothing else going on, so Peter decides, what else have I got to lose? He heads to Nova Scotia. And of course, he learns about the treasure as well. And then finally, we have Dandy, who is, I would say, most people's favorite character. She's a 15-year-old. She is an eccentric. She's a brilliant, but sort of oddball character whose best friend from childhood was her grandfather, who she referred to as Grandy. They had this sort of Grandy Dandy nickname thing going on. And when we meet Dandy at the beginning of the book, Grandy has just passed away, kind of unexpectedly, and she is lost. She's sort of socially isolated. She's adrift, and she finds that Grandy, her grandfather, left her uh, a mystery. He left her a mystery. Basically, he left her a few items and a letter saying, "I've been trying to find this treasure for my whole life, and I want you to follow through and finish the quest on my behalf." And so, with all of these three characters landing in Maple Bay with their own sort of things going on, they don't know one another at all. The mystery kicks off, and of course, before too long, someone turns up dead, and all three of them get drawn into the mystery of both the treasure and the people who start to turn up dead in this town. So I think that kind of covers it, and then all sorts of stuff happens. And I should mention, so I've been talking a lot. I should mention very briefly, I was in New York for the Edgars a couple of weeks ago, and I picked up a really nasty bug, and I'm at the tail end of it. But I'm going to have to go on mute and cough every once in a while just to let you know. So this is a good chance for you guys to kind of dive back.
Got it. Well, I love that. That synopsis was so great. And my first question is really the question that I'm dying to ask you is, where did you get the idea for this story?
Well, as with most books, it came from a lot of different places. And I would say the first one, I mentioned, I believe that I used to write young adult fiction. I wrote young adult mysteries, and I had sort of a career setback about three and a half years ago. I had had some success. Elizabeth, you mentioned I won some awards, and things seemed to be going really well in that corner of my career. And then I decided, this is my moment to really kind of shine. I took a year and a half to go away and write what I thought was my masterpiece, young adult epic thriller. And it died on submission. We sent it to editors everywhere, and for various very logical and understandable reasons, they all turned it down. But it was a really discouraging moment for me. And so against this backdrop, I was asked to go to the very small, charming town of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia, which is very similar to Maple Bay. And I was given a house sitting opportunity. You can kind of see where this is going.
Yeah.
And it was November, and in Nova Scotia, the summer people come. It's lively from June through October, but by November it starts to get cold and people hit the road. So I was on the coast in a lovely home. All the neighboring houses were empty. It was really remote. It was foggy. It was mysterious. I was walking my dog every day, and I had given myself this moment. I figured with this career setback, this is the time to finally write that adult mystery I've been thinking about for 20 years. And my first idea was, wow, wouldn't it be great to have a character fish out of water from the States, comes to Nova Scotia. She doesn't know anybody. She's house sitting, and someone turns up dead. And that was the first my first idea for the book. It was going to be called The House Sitter, and that was going to be it. And I started writing that book, and that's where Cass came from. She was the first character to emerge. And it was going all right, but it was a bit flat. I knew it needed some more dimension. And I went for a drive one day, and I passed a place called Oak Island. And Oak Island, some of you may have heard of the Oak Island treasure, but it's a very famous missing treasure story in Nova Scotia. There's a cable TV show that's been very popular. It's 16 seasons. Franklin Delano Roosevelt invested in trying to dig up this treasure. It's a big story here in Nova Scotia, and it has kind of an international following. And a light bulb went off over my head. I need to pull a missing treasure story into this mystery of the house sitter. And things kind of took off from there. Gradually, I found the dandy character who was sort of comfortable for me because I'd written teen detectives before. And when the pieces started to kind of assemble in front of me, uh, I knew that I had something. You know, sometimes as a writer, you kind of settle on an idea or a milieu or an atmospheric conceit, and you know that you're on the right path. And I knew very early on that this was the story to be telling for sure.
So cool. I love it.
Well, Allison and I are both Gen Xers, and we grew up watching The Goonies.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering, did the movie at all give you any inspiration for the book, and do you like that comparison?
I love that comparison. I grew up in I'm a dead set. I'm 48. The Goonies was I was the sweet spot for me when I was about 10. I think it came out when I was 9 or 10. And
Oh,
my
wow.
brothers and I watched that VHS tape till it fell apart. So I did love the Goonies, absolutely. And I would say because I'm lucky enough to be from Nova Scotia, which is a very beautiful place, you should all come visit. And it has a really interesting there's a lot going on culturally from pirate stories and treasure stories. All of that stuff came naturally to me. Um, but those big 80s sprawling, shaggy, adventure mystery stories like The Goonies, like Stand By Me, Romancing the Stone, all of those the 80s had such good movies where people just
It
got
really
swept
did.
up into adventures. That was kind of the tone that I was going for. So it was The Goonies, it was a whole lot of other influences for sure. Yeah, but 100%, I was a big Goonies fan growing up.
Oh, good.
Yes, Goonies never say die for sure.
Absolutely.
So tell us when you mentioned being a YA author and then now entering into the adult mystery genre, what is that like? Are there similarities, or does it take a minute for you to be adjusting to it? I'd love to hear about that.
For me, it was a very natural evolution. I started writing YA. I won't go into the details, but it was sort of an accident. I always wanted to write mysteries. I knew I wanted to write mysteries. I loved Agatha Christie, Lois Duncan, Stephen King, anything dark and mysterious, particularly small town. That was kind of my thing. But for various reasons, I met an editor and she liked my stuff, and I just started writing YA and it went well, so I just kept going with it. But I knew that I wanted to write for adults. And so I think sometimes a door closes and a window opens. That was sort of my experience with that. If that other book had sold, I might very well still be writing YA, but it really did feel like the universe was telling me, this is the moment you really should take that leap. And once I started writing for adults, one thing I will say is that when you're writing for teens, it's really important to have a lot of respect for your audience. The story is the story is the story, but it's really about the characters and the people that you're writing for. You respect them. Young adults are very sophisticated readers, so I have all the respect in the world for that corner of things. But you are kind of limited in the characters that you're writing. So you're writing about teenagers for the most part when you write YA. Writing this book, obviously one of my main characters is a teen, but I was also able to write about a gay guy in his 40s, which is that's my life. And I was able to write about a writer who had had some failures. My canvas became broader and more expansive. And so that opened up all sorts of opportunities as a writer that I soaked it up. I had so much fun writing this book. I felt like I had been kind of unleashed in a lot of ways. And as much as I'm really proud of my YA books, I think I'm kind of done with that part of my career, and I'm full steam ahead with mysteries, adult mysteries from now on.
Well, just talking about the different types of characters in the book and the present day and the past and first person versus third person, how were you able to keep it all straight? Did you plot it all out? Did you kind of know from the beginning how the story was going to go? Was there an outline, or how did you keep it all straight?
I am very much an outliner. You'll hear sometimes that there are pantsers and there are plotters. There are writers who write by the seat of their pants. There are writers who plot. The reality is that most of us fall somewhere in the middle. With mysteries, I personally feel, and a lot of people would disagree with me, but I feel that mystery readers are voracious. They are so loyal to the writers that they love, and they also they have a very finely tuned sense of when a story is crafted logically and believably. And so I take it very seriously. And it's honestly the most fun part of writing for me is before I ever write an actual word of a chapter, it's that 2 or 3 month period where I'm plotting. I'm telling myself the story before I figure out how to tell it to a reader. And so for me, that is, all that stuff I was talking about, figuring out I wanted there to be a house sitter and I wanted there to be a treasure. And then I had Dandy because I had that sort of, I wanted a teenage detective. Those things were kind of pulled together loosely. But once I had my material, I started to think about how I could craft that into a convincing, compelling, logical. Logic is so important with a mystery. It needs to make sense at the end. You have to get to the end and feel like, okay, it was all leading up to this. And so I had almost everything. There's always a lot of space around the edges when you start writing to be organic and to figure things out. But I knew what the mechanics of the story were early. And the big one, the elephant in the room, is the massive twist at the end.
Yeah.
I love a good twist in a book. It's my favorite part of writing, or one of my many favorite parts of writing, is figuring out what that surprise is going to be, and then teaching myself how to write the story so that I can get to that surprise and 9 out of 10 readers doesn't see it coming. That's really satisfying. And when I hear from readers who say, I did not see that coming, it makes me feel like I did something right along the way.
Yeah.
So I did have that, I did have the big twist figured out very early. And it was another light bulb moment where I thought, I had Peter and I had his, kind of storyline worked out. And at a certain point, I thought, if I did this switcheroo, and if I could pull that off, that would be a great moment to kind of wrap the book up on.
Good job.
Thank
I
you.
didn't see it. I had no idea. And that's most of what I read is mystery thriller.
I love it.
True.
Yeah.
Well, my question is going to be a two-parter because we have a good question in the chat as well. The question I wrote was, are any characters based on real people that you know? And we have a good question that says, which character was the easiest to write and the hardest to write?
Great questions. Nobody is based on a actual person. That's something you learn very early on when you write novels. You have to be very cautious of who.
Yes.
I'm from a really small town with deep roots. I have lots of cousins. I have brothers and their families and my parents and all their friends. And when my first novel came out, I got a lot of, this must be this person and that must be that person. And so on one hand, no, nobody is directly related. But on the other hand, as a writer, you're always picking up on character nuances and turns of phrase and different character insights in the people that you meet. And you're kind of like a magpie. You pull those bits and pieces together and you put them back in your little bag of tricks. And then you bring those different things together. And hopefully, if you're doing your job right, you create a new character who feels convincing because they're drawn from the stuff of life. But I would be far too scared to try and write a character who was based on a real person.
I was hoping that Dandy might be real because she's my favorite.
I'm glad. I love Dandy too. Dandy, and to answer your other question, Dandy was the easiest character for me to write. Because I think part of it was because I had a lot of experience writing teens, and I was sort of a dandy. I was a very sort of socially introverted kid. I did a lot of reading. I was more comfortable with adults than I was with people my own age. But it was also, sometimes you create a character and they just sort of appear fully formed. And that really was Dandy for me. I imagined her, and as soon as I thought this could be a character, she sort of just magically emerged in front of me. And then, of course, the relationship between Dandy and her grandfather is so important to the book. She's so much an extension of him, a continuation of his story, that when I kind of started to create him, that added more fullness and depth to her characterization as well. And it was really important for me, the scene at the very beginning, the prologue where Dandy and Grandy are on the beach together and she's just a little kid. That was the last part of the book that I wrote. That wasn't originally in the first draft. And there was always something missing in those earlier drafts where you know, you have this relationship that is in a lot of ways the most important relationship in the book, but you only ever meet one of those characters. And so you're always defining Dandy and absence in relation to the absence of Grandy. So it was nice. The book was in a really strong point by the time I wrote that prologue. And so when I wrote it, I felt like this is really kind of finishing off their story by going back and starting at the beginning.
Love
Well, I
it.
wanted to talk a little bit about the setting, and I guess for this, I'm a Southern girl. Both Allison and I are Southern American.
It reached
Mhm.
100 degrees today. So
Oh my
there's that.
gosh.
Yes.
It
It's
did not
unusual. It
reach
had
100 degrees here. I can tell.
Yes.
yeah. But we want to talk to you a little bit about Nova Scotia. Of course, I grew up a huge Anne of Green Gables fan. My oldest son was named Matthew from Matthew Cuthbert, and so that part of the country has always been such a romantic thing to me. So, can you tell us a little bit more about life in Nova Scotia? And I'm always curious as a book buyer if you have any recommendations of really good mysteries set in Nova Scotia, other than, of course, the Treasure Hunters Club.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well that of course I will draw a blank on the mysteries. I will let me come back to that one because
Okay.
I read so much. And of course there are many great mysteries here. Well, Nova Scotia, one thing you'll learn if you meet people like me from Nova Scotia, from Atlantic Canada generally, because Anne of Green Gables is Prince Edward Island, which is our
Right.
tiny little neighboring province. However, trivia, Anne of Green Gables was born in Nova Scotia. She was born in Halifax
That's right.
and was sent over to live with Matthew and Marilla, and she became, as soon as she stepped onto can you tell I'm also a big Anne of Green Gables fan?
I love that you are. This is wonderful.
Love it. I mean, the Megan Follows version, when I was a kid, we
Oh,
watched that
the
every
best.
Christmas. That was
That is
the high water
that is
mark.
canon. That is not the new Netflix one.
Absolutely.
No.
So the thing about this part of this neck of the woods, my neck of the woods, is we're all very proud of being from here. We love where we live. I know so many people who a regular topic of conversation is, wow, aren't we lucky to live here? First of all, it's geographically stunning. It's really very beautiful here, and it's diversely beautiful. We have the South Shore, which is where my book is set, which is, it's sort of like Maine, little fog-draped inlets and colorful Victorian homes perched on the water. I'm from Cape Breton Island, which is closer to PEI, but is completely different from both of those other places. It's, think cliffs and mountains plunging into the ocean, incredible fall colors. So it's beautiful, but the people are also really great and there are some really deep roots here. The community I grew up in is about 2,000 people, and I know how everyone is connected. I call it the web of connection. I know that, somebody I went to school with and the grandmother of somebody I went to school with, and my grandmother had a feud back in the 50s over a missing what, like that kind of thing.
Nice.
And I know a
Love
lot of
it.
small southern towns have that same sort of like, we know who your people are, like that kind of vibe. And so there's a very deep, tight-knit sort of vibe here. And that goes from, the Scottish settlers to the German settlers, the African Nova Scotians, the original Mi'kmaq inhabitants. We all kind of have a similar but slightly different approach to the land and the fact that we love living here. So it's just great. And we're, very creatively, there are almost exactly 1 million people in Nova Scotia. So it's a small place, but we have a very, a very well-established and rich cultural scene. Music, literature, um, film, you name it. There's a lot of arts, and it's the arts is very important in our day-to-day life. And it's the sort of thing where, I grew up in, like I said, in this very small town, and I knew people who, worked at the local newspaper but wrote novels on the side. I knew people who worked as teachers but were painters in the evening. And it was just kind of a great sort of environment to grow up in because it demystified the act of being a creative person. It didn't seem like this thing you had to go away to Toronto or New York to become trained. You could just be living your life and making art on the side. And as a writer, that was a really great lesson to kind of pick up as a young person.
Now, I do know that Halifax is the second largest natural harbor in the world.
It is. After
Mhm.
Sydney,
Yes,
Mhm.
I read
Wow.
The Great Halifax Explosion, which was an utterly fantastic book.
Yep.
And I did know that I know that Nova Scotia is not the same as PEI, but around here it's close enough.
Oh,
Yes.
100%. Yeah,
Yes.
it certainly is. I mean, we would when you get closer to our borders, we'll start to point out the differences, of course. But
Yes.
no, it's great. And you asked about books that were written from here. Some are coming to mind now. So my friend Bethany Myers, B.R. Myers, she won an Edgar Award 2 years ago for her A Dreadful Splendor, which is a great book. And she most recently published The Third Wife of Faraday House, which is set in the early 1800s in Nova Scotia. And it's kind of I think, sort of a Daphne du Maurier style gothic romance, woman in peril who has to kind of figure stuff out. My friend Joe Treggieri writes great teen mysteries. So The Grey Sisters and Heartbreak Homes is another one. There are loads of them.
I'm writing it all down because I love
I know.
I love Canadian books, and I just
Let me send you a list when I get my senses about me tomorrow. I'll drop you a note with some more
Oh,
suggestions.
thank you.
My pleasure.
I want to add on that list, which I was going to ask later, is I'd love to know the books that you think have the best twists, because you said
Oh my.
you enjoy twists.
I can give you some, oh, for sure. Well, I mean, I really do read a lot. I read and I listen to audiobooks. I'm pounding through books all the time, and I have been like that since I was a little kid. And I will tell you, this is such a cliche, but it has to be said because it had such an impact on me. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd has by Agatha Christie was the first sort of classic golden age mystery I read when I was a kid, because I would read Stephen King and I would read whatever my little school library. I had a great school librarian. We had a very underfunded, there was no drama, there was no music at my school beyond third grade,
Wow.
but there was a little library. And so as sort of a creative kid kind of yearning to kind of, absorb stuff. This is well before the internet could just provide it all to you. Books were really very, very important. And I remember her seeing that I was reading these sort of like Christopher Pike and Lois Duncan and those sort of pulpier books. And at one point she handed me The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. And she said, I don't know if you've read Agatha Christie, but she's she's the gold standard.
Yes.
Pardon me. And I remember taking it home, sitting on the school bus and reading it, and then taking it home and reading it probably in one or two nights, and getting to the end. And have you both read The Murder of Roger Ackroyd?
I have not.
Oh my gosh, it's what I reread it a couple of years ago, and it's very dusty. It feels like it's from like the 1920s, and so
Right.
it feels dated in a lot of ways, just the way that people speak and that sort of thing.
Right.
But the twist is so great and it's so well executed. And I remember I was probably 11 or 12. I remember getting to that twist and thinking, just my mind was absolutely blown. And at that point, I was already kind of a writer in training. I wrote stories. I would create plays and make my brother. We lived way off in the woods on kind of a rural area. And I would make my brothers act out these plays, and they were always mysteries. And I remember thinking, how did she do that? Like kind of reverse going through it in my mind and trying to figure out how did she engineer that twist, because it was just so brilliant. A more contemporary example, one of my all-time favorite books with one of the greatest twists in all of fiction is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. I don't know if either of you have read it, but Sarah Waters is great. And she's one of my favorite writers. She can do no wrong. But Fingersmith in particular, and I don't want to say anything more about it than that, because it is the sort of book. I don't even want to allude to anything. You just have to read it and let the story sweep you up. It's sort of a Dickensian era story, and it's really fantastic, and it has a wonderful twist. And of course, Riley Sager can just nail a twist with the best of them. And
I had chips and guacamole with Riley Sager a couple of years
And
ago.
you had margaritas as well.
And margaritas, that too.
Gosh, I got to get down to Waco.
I know.
Sounds
It's
great.
fun.
Right.
Well, okay,
Riley's
so
awesome.
I wonder, have you read The Eight Perfect Murders?
Yes, Peter Swanson. I love Peter Swanson.
And
he's great.
yeah, Catherine Ryan Howard. Have you read her? She's Irish.
Oh, she's great. The Nothing Man.
Yes.
Yeah, no, she's excellent. I went through a little back in the fall. I read 4 or 5 of hers in a row because I was really digging her stuff. Because she has sort of a, I don't know if you read Tana French, but she has that same sort of approach, but she not approach, but her tone and her language and the way she unfolds a story reminds me of Tana French, only Irish.
Yes. And to continue that little alcohol with authors, we had a French 75s when I was in Dublin together and had a really, really good time.
With
So,
Catherine Ryan Howard. Oh my gosh.
oh yeah, we're buds.
Well, you
She's
have to
amazing.
come to Nova Scotia and we'll go out
Well,
for martinis or daiquiris or something.
yes, something it has to be something fun like that. I will take you up on that for
This is
sure.
Absolutely.
Elizabeth's like drinking around the world that you would do
That's
it.
right, with
She's
authors.
actually the actual world. She's drinking
I
on
mean, listen, if you can make that happen, you should make that happen. That
I
sounds
think
like
so. I'm gonna speak it to into
it's a
existence.
great way to
That's right.
travel.
Yeah.
So fun.
I think we've had so much fun talking. We got off there.
Well, okay, so speaking of twists, this is when we're talking about the twists. So fair warning to anyone who's not finished reading. When I love a twist so much, I feel like I want the author to really have their way, and completely surprise me. So when I read the twist, because my first, thinking about comparing it to the Goonies, and this should be a movie. And when I got to the twist, I was like, well, how would there be a movie because this twist is really for the reader? Does that make sense? Did
It
that ever
does.
occur to you? Have you ever thought about it?
It has, yeah. So I'll take that from 2 different angles. The first is that I have a few years ago, one of my young adult novels almost became a TV show, and I was able to write on the writer's room for 4 months. It was during COVID, and it got so close. Like we had a full Writers Guild of America room. We had a showrunner hired. We were ready to do casting, and then the writer's
Wow.
strike kind of put the kibosh to it. However, it was a wonderful experience, and I learned a lot about crafting a TV show out of a book. And so every book I write now, I do try to, because I think visually, I think I write visually. I like to write scenes in a way that you can kind of imagine them. I don't do that with my characters. This is just a side note. Somebody pointed this out to me. I don't really describe my characters. I let the characters be in the reader's imagination, but I like to describe the setting. And I like to structure things in a way that you can imagine it being either a TV series or a film. And I really, obviously, one of the big dreams of most writers is getting that adaptation finally on the screen. So here's hoping.
Right.
With this one, it did occur to me that this would be difficult. But last year it was optioned by a major studio, and nothing's happening with it. It looks like it's going, the rights will revert to me, and that happens. You guys know enough writers. That happens all the time. But it was really exciting, and what was cool about it was because I'd had this opportunity to work on this other series, they were open to me pitching my vision, and there was no promise that I would be involved, but they wanted to hear my thoughts on how this would play out, and then they were open to me maybe participating. Excuse me. And so I thought a lot about the twist and how to make it happen on TV. And I think I landed on it, which is we begin with, and I won't waste a lot of time with this because we have more books up.
No, I need this question answered.
Okay.
So I'm glad that you're addressing it.
Because that was one of their big questions, is how would you pull off the twist? Because it's so important to the story. And I think it's actually pretty straightforward. You begin with your prologue, either with Grandy and Dandy on the beach, or you even go further back and you have the pirate battle and the treasure coming to shore. Because I think that would be a really fun cold open for a TV show. Then you do a credit sequence, and then you land at the airport in Vancouver. And Peter, who we know later on as Ricky, is sitting there waiting for a flight to Halifax, Nova Scotia. And he's got a hoodie on and he's kind of rumpled. And a lady sits down next to him and she starts chatting to him. And he tells her the story of getting this letter from his grandmother in Nova Scotia. And as he's telling the story, he flashes back to the exchange in the apartment, except he flips the 2 characters.
So good. Very Fight Club. I love it.
I was thinking very White Lotus, like kind of the White Lotus thing too, where you're
sort of both. Yeah, for sure. And
look at me.
Look at you.
Well, I mean, we need to talk. Maybe we should just go into producing together. And
Perfect.
I do think that it could be pulled off, and I think that it would be a little bit of fancy footwork, but you can do all kinds of stuff. One thing I learned about my experience on that other series is that TV writers, it's such a, I mean, when I'm writing a book, it's me in my office by myself. But when you're doing a TV show, we had, I think, 7 people, and everyone's coming at it from different angles, and you break up scripts into different parts. You say, okay, Suzanne, you write this part, Tom, you write this part, and then we'll come back together. So it's a lot of different, it's a much more collaborative enterprise. And what's nice about that, I mean, that can have its frustrations, but we had a great team. And what's nice about that is you have a lot of people brainstorming this kind of thing together. And I think it's doable, and I do think, I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I do think this would make a fantastic limited series. And as I know we will talk about before the end, there's opportunities for future seasons as well. So
Love it. Well,
That's so
before my
great.
next question, I just want to say you have beautiful Hoyas.
oh, thank you. I finally, I have 7 varieties, and this big one over here, I won't turn my camera around, but there's a massive one that I've taken from one. My husband was in the Canadian Navy for years, and so we moved all around Canada. I have this massive Hoya that just started blooming last week. So that's
Oh,
a feather in my cap.
I
Make
love
my Hoya
it.
bloom.
I have quite a few Hoya and they have not bloomed, and they should because we have a lot of sun here. So
Mhm.
a little jealous.
You'll get there.
Yes. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about, we just love the fact that you included this fledgling author, struggling author in a bookstore as well.
Mhm.
We always do a big display every year in August on our birthday celebration on books about books or bookstores.
Great.
So can you tell us, was there a bookstore in Nova Scotia that you kind of had in mind? What is your indie bookstore at home?
We have so many great indie bookstores here in Nova Scotia, and I'll chime them off very quickly. There's Woozles, which is the children's bookstore. It's Canada's oldest children's bookstore. It's wonderful. It's got a great vibe, and it's been a Halifax institution for 45 years. I think they're coming up on their 50th. There's Bookmark in Halifax, which is another wonderful one. But what's really fun about Lunenburg, which is the town that I most closely based Maple Bay on, is it's a very small town. It's actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and I would encourage anyone who's interested to Google Lunenburg and get that bird's eye view, because it's a spectacularly attractive town. And for such a small town, there's a few restaurants, and there are some antique stores, and just kind of what you would imagine in your classic New England small town. There are 3 bookstores on the same drag. There's one Lunenburg bound. Then there's Block Shop, which is I know the owners of Block Shop quite well, and I'm going on Saturday to their 10th birthday party to do a reading as part of those celebrations. And then across the street is Elizabeth Books, which is sort of a mix of secondhand and new books. But the funny thing about Elizabeth Books is you never know when it's open. Sometimes it doesn't open until 9:30 at night because the guy who owns it just on a whim decides. And so all 3 of them are great. And I
I
love
think I need a t-shirt from that shop.
I do too.
from Elizabeth Bookstores. I'll do my best. I don't know if they have t-shirts, but Lunenburg Bound has a great t-shirt, and I should have worn it tonight because on the back it's got kind of a cool logo, and on the back it says arguably one of the 3 best bookstores in Lunenburg.
Oh
I like
no.
And so my friend Joe Truggieri, I mentioned her earlier. She's a young adult novelist. She's the co-owner of Block Shop, which is a really great bookstore. It's in the bottom of an old heritage building in Lunenburg, and you kind of go down these steps, and it's this really charming little space. And I mean, I love an indie bookstore. Take me to any town, any city, I will immediately, first I'll find the coffee shop, and then I'll find the indie bookstore. And so I spent a lot of time in Block Shop just kind of talking shop with Joe. So I would say that that's the bookstore that most closely resembles my bookstore.
Okay.
Bree, who's the bookstore owner, is not Joe, and I made that very clear to her when I brought her her first advance copy. This is not you. You are not a gossipy divorcee. And so again, you have to kind of write characters that are not the people that you know, but you can certainly write the places that you know, and then shake them up in your head. You know, the geography and the location of shelves and stuff moves around, but we love those inspirations.
Yeah, I love it.
Love that. So I say this many times, but I love a book with a map, and
Mhm.
the map was so great. And I loved even that was like in the beginning of the book and then the end of the book as well. So depending on where you were in the book, you could just go back and forth.
Yeah.
Um,
Dream come
it-
true.
that
as a
is so cool.
as a
Did you
bookish
get to
girl.
draw it? Did you did you kind of map it out in general
Yeah.
and give it to the designer? Okay.
I sketched it out and I sent that sketch to my editor at
Mhm.
Grove, and they hired a map maker in
Wow.
the UK who does this specifically. If you go to his website, he does maps for books, and he turned it into
That's
kind of a
so
proper
cool.
map. And I wanted it to have this sort of nautical,
Mhm.
like the knots and that sort of old school vibe, because charts, in the sailing world, sailing is very big in this neck of the woods. Charts and maps and just that sort of, and there are old nautical charts in the book. So I thought that was sort of the vibe that we
Yeah.
would, yeah.
Did you intend it in the beginning or did they ask you to do the map?
Sorry, can you ask that again? I was
Yes. Did you intend to have the map when you were writing the book, or did the editor suggest it?
We all kind of, so I actually have two editors. It was published in the United States with Grove, Atlantic Crime now, and it was published in Canada with Simon and Schuster Canada. And so I had two editors, which I'd never had that experience before. And I've heard horror stories about that, not people having, but we were a really lovely, tight-knit little team. And there was a lot of sort of collaborative brainstorming. And one of the things that we all agreed on very early was this book needs a map. It just has that, everything about the story, everything about and it fits the vibe and the tone of the book, but it also has a practical purpose, which is you are moving the characters around a lot. So dropping a map at the beginning. My big regret is that at one point we kind of discussed, should we have a character plot, character code?
Like a family tree, yes, kind of thing.
We couldn't really figure out how to do it because there are so many different families, and we just kind of said, well, people, and so many readers have said, I loved it, but the one thing is it was a little bit difficult to keep track of who the people were. And then somebody, of course, made the suggestion that would have been ideal, which is create your character code out of the 5 treasure hunters boys, and then have all the people before and after them, and just have them highlighted in the middle. So maybe for future editions, I think it's coming out.
Paperback.
Paperback,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great.
That's so cool.
Well, can you talk to us a little bit about what you are working on next?
Oh my gosh, my favorite. I love it. So my next book comes out this fall. It's called We Had a Hunch. And
Okay.
this is the Grove cover. This is this time the Canadian cover will be different, but this is for your all our American friends. This is the Grove cover. It's got sort of a Alfred Hitchcock, Saul Bass look, which I really like. And the premise is, I've spoken quite a bit about how I used to write young adult mysteries. And I always loved teen detectives. When I was a kid, I was in the hospital. We have this little small town, charming little small town hospital. And there was a very small children's ward. I think there were 4 beds. But at some point, someone had donated an entire set of Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys books. So I was in the hospital for probably a couple of weeks, and I was a very keen reader, and I read as many of them as I could, and I really fell in love. So that's part of my origin story as a mystery writer as well. And so I always like that trope of the teen detective because there's something really, it's the tension between sort of a young, naive, figuring out life as a young person, but then getting caught up in sort of a dramatic mystery that I always really loved. And I was not a kid who dreamed of athletic feats. I was not a kid who wanted to fly into outer space or do anything dangerous, but I love the idea of solving mysteries. I thought that would be a cool way for me to kind of make my mark. And so long story short, this is the story that we're pitching it as Nancy Drew meets Yellow Jackets. It asks the simple question, what happens to your favorite teenage detectives when they grow up? So imagine if Nancy Drew had a twin sister, the Van Dyne twins. Their dad was the small town police chief in their small town in Massachusetts, and they sort of started helping him solve mysteries. And at the same time, in the same town, there was sort of an Encyclopedia Brown type who was this young, introverted computer geek. This is around the year 2000. And he starts sort of solving online crimes. And so this town becomes known 25 years ago as the town that has the teen detectives. But then, of
Mm.
course, things get dark. A serial killer starts picking people off. They stick their noses in when they shouldn't, and everything goes terribly wrong. And so we pick up with them 25 years later. They're in middle age, they're in their 40s, and of course, somebody in their old, and they've all scattered to the wind. They're all doing their own things. And somebody in their, a new body turns up in the old town, and they get dragged back to town to get caught up in a new mystery. So it's really the very simple question was whatever happened to Nancy Drew after she grew up? Whatever happened to Encyclopedia Brown and Harriet the Spy? And so I think it's pretty fun. I really enjoyed writing it, and that comes out in October.
Lovely.
And what I'm working on right now, which I'm probably not supposed to be talking about, so if anybody is
We won't tell anyone.
no social media, please. I have an agreement to write the Treasure Hunters Club sequel, and what we hope is that it will be the second of at least 3 books. And I'm having so much fun writing it. I've never written a sequel to any of my books. And going back to those characters and revisiting that town and catching up with them all a year later. So it's Dandy, it's Cass, it's Peter. It kicks off at Cass's book launch at the bookstore. And of course, they all have stuff going on. Dandy's father, her estranged father, comes back to town, and he's got something he wants from her. Peter is trying to figure out what he's going to do next with his life. Cass and Bryson are having issues, and he turns out Bryson has a secret in his past. And then, of course, there's a big epic mystery from 100 years ago surrounding a family of a lighthouse keeper and his family who disappeared from the lighthouse island off the shore out of the blue back in the 1930s, and no one ever found out what happened to them. And of course, the 3 characters get caught up. It's going to be really good. I'm really having
That
so much fun
sounds
with
great.
it. And
I'm sold.
well,
Yes.
listen, do you know what? When you get to know these characters and then you close the door on them, and you think, well, that's that. There's sort of a sadness that comes along with that, because I spent so much time with these characters. They're real to me. And I have had so many conversations like this one with people who liked the book and wanted to know more about, where did Dandy come from? Tell me more about Cass. Is there a bit of you and Peter? Now I get to kind of expand on their stories. And as much fun as the mystery has been to write, and there'll be 2 big twists in this one.
Oh, nice.
As much fun as the mystery is, it's really very satisfying to go back into their lives and kind of help them evolve as characters. It's been great.
Oh, excited. Well, we
can't wait.
will have to get on the book tour for that. It
Oh
might
my
be.
gosh, I'll come anytime.
Oh, okay. We
Let's
love it.
do it.
We'll try to get you at that time when it's not 100 degrees here, though.
Listen, I can use a bit of heat once in a while. I have good sunscreen.
There you go. This was such a delight, Tom. Thank you so much. The book is wonderful. We just really adored it. And I'm so glad that we get to revisit these characters again in your new book soon.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, both of you. And I mean, I was aware of Fabled choosing. You guys are in Waco, right? Is that
Right,
yes.
right? I was aware of Fabled choosing the book. And so, of course, I went and checked out the bookstore, and I thought, this is really great. And then I was seeing you posting about it. And so I just can't thank you enough for just, we really do genuinely, truly appreciate the work that you all do. Independent booksellers are, ground zero for word of mouth, spreading the word about books that you love, and it means so much. And it's just been a lot of fun, and this was a great conversation, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
That's so
It's
great.
it's the best part of the job. We
It's good.
love highlighting fantastic literature, and especially getting to shine a light on an author that maybe people in Central Texas don't know. And actually, we have a much broader audience than just Central
Yes.
Texas, but even just Americans. What a great author we have in the beautiful Maritimes of Canada.
I love it. And I mean, anyone who comes to Nova Scotia, look me up, and we'll go out for a
Love
drink.
it.
Oh, you know I will. I'm already
This is
thinking
true.
about it.
She's drinking around the world, so she's got.
That's right. Only
check
with
it off.
authors, though. Only with authors. I
Only with
have standards.
Of course.
So-
Fair
yes.
enough. Fair enough. Well, it's a date.
Well, Speaking of champion authors, I have put our next book club pick in the chat. You can register on Zoom. Tom, you're welcome to register too, and buy the book at Fabled. I'm gonna have Elizabeth give you just a little preview of it. And for this next one, Elizabeth and I will not be able to host, but this book is so well loved by our staff. Like when we asked the two people to host, they were like, absolutely, absolutely. They love this book so much. So I promise it's a great one, and it's a good summer read.
Yes, so our next book club will be The Road to Tender Hearts by Annie Hartnett. And it'll easily be one of my favorite books of the year. It was just so funny and poignant and found family, literal and figuratively. It just is a stunningly beautiful novel. And yes, I don't think Allison and I have never both stepped away from the mic for the Zoom, but you're going to be with your daughter, and my daughter and I have
Yes.
our annual girls trip. And it just so happened that two of the other managers at the shop have read it and loved it, and they were so excited to be able to host. So we will be back, I guess in July,
Yes,
but
July.
please
Don't
tune in
forget.
and show a lot of love to Kai and to Laura, and we hope to see you next month.
Thank you guys. Thanks again, Tom.
Thanks,
Thanks
Appreciate it.
all.
Tom.
Take
All right.
care.
All right,
All right.
bye.
Bye.